All right, today we are tackling a big one. It's one of the most powerful and honestly most persistent archetypes in our culture, the myth of the lone wolf. You know the one. It's a story we've been fed for generations, this figure that's celebrated in all our movies and books. But what if that entire story is just flat out wrong? It really all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. This equation that's been drilled into guys' heads for generations. And it's this: need equals weakness. The belief that if you need anything, or, anyone, that is an undeniable sign that you're weak. And look, this isn't just some abstract concept. This is the very foundation of the myth we're about to tear down. Okay, so to really get this, we first have to look at the ideal, right? This is the romantic, celebrated version of the lone wolf that we see absolutely everywhere, from Hollywood blockbusters to the classics we read in school. This is the hero we're all taught to look up to. And I mean, think about the icons that have been sold to us as the peak of masculinity. You've got John Wick, right? The super skilled assassin driven by this intense personal mission. Then there's the classic cowboy, the strong, silent type, totally self-sufficient out on the frontier. And of course, Batman, the guy who turns tragedy into a one-man war on crime completely on his own. We celebrate these guys for being so independent, but what's the real price they're paying for it? So yeah, the lesson we're taught again and again is that ultimate strength comes from being completely self-reliant. It's this powerful, deeply ingrained message that to be a man means you stand alone. You don't need anything from anyone. But here's the thing. That message is also incredibly dangerous. So let's flip this whole thing on its head for a second. What if that ideal we just talked about, what if it isn't a source of strength at all? What if it's actually a psychological trap? One with a very, very real cost. It's time to pull back the curtain and look at what's really going on here. Okay, so the myth tells us that isolation is a sign of strength, right? That being a lone wolf is a powerful choice. But the reality, the biological reality, it tells a totally different story. The truth is, humans are pack animals. We are hardwired, for thousands and thousands of years, to see being alone not as a strength, but as a literal death threat. Seriously, getting kicked out of the tribe was a death sentence for our ancestors. And that old programming, it is still running in our brains today. And you know what? This behavior actually has a clinical name. It's called hyperindependence. And let me be clear, this has nothing to do with being stoic or strong. It is a trauma response. It's a defense mechanism that comes from this deep-seated belief that it's just not safe to rely on other people. It's a shield you put up, not a sign of strength. And this is pretty much the internal script that's running on a loop. It's a belief that often gets baked in during childhood, from times you were let down. It's what fuels this hyper-independence when you grow up. It's this deep, powerful conviction that says, nope, you are the only person you can truly count on. And that single belief, man, it can have absolutely devastating consequences. So you might be thinking, okay, that's an individual thing. But how does this one psychological issue blow up into a massive problem for all of society? Well, the answer is something experts are now calling the Friendship Recession. And it is a quiet but very real crisis happening all around us.
And just look at these numbers. The data here it's genuinely shocking. Back in 1990, over half of men, 55%, said they had at least 6 close friends. That sounds pretty good, right? Well, fast forward about 30 years to 2021, and that number has been chopped in half. It's plummeted to just 27%. We're not talking about a small dip here. This is a total collapse of social connection for men.
And if you thought that last number was bad, hold on. Get this. Today, 15% of men, that's about 1 in every 7 guys, report having 0 close friends. Let me say that again. Not 1 or 2 friends. 0. This is the lone wolf myth playing out in real life with absolutely devastating numbers. Now, this massive lack of friends doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It has a huge and honestly often crippling effect on romantic relationships. It creates this thing called the partner burden, and it's exactly what it sounds like. One person is unfairly expected to carry the weight of everything. Think about it. When a guy has 0 friends for support or connection, where do all his emotional and social needs go? Well, they all get dumped onto his partner, 100% of them. Suddenly, she's supposed to be his lover, his therapist, his best friend, and his buddy for every single hobby. It's an impossible job. No one person can handle that kind of weight, and over time, it will absolutely crush even the strongest relationships. Okay, so That's the problem. And yeah, it sounds pretty bleak, I get it, but the good news is there's a way out. There is a clear, practical escape route. But it's going to involve retraining a social muscle, a skill that, for a lot of guys, has basically gone unused for years. And the very first step before you do anything else is a huge mental shift. You have to completely reframe the problem. Admitting you're lonely is not a failure of being stoic. That's just that old myth talking again. You have to start seeing loneliness for what it actually is, a serious danger to your health and well-being, just as real as any physical threat. So where do you even start? Well, you have to rebuild what we call your ask muscle. First, you admit there's a problem, that this isolation needs to be fixed. Then, you start ridiculously small, like ask a neighbor if you can borrow a screwdriver. That's it. It's a super low-stakes, simple ask. Once you've done that, you scale up just a little. Maybe ask a colleague for their advice on a work thing. The whole point is to just keep taking these small steps until you break the seal, and asking for help stops feeling like this huge, terrifying thing. And what you're doing with these tiny steps is actually really powerful. You're basically gathering new evidence for your brain. Every time you make a small ask and it goes fine, you're giving your brain proof, real, tangible proof, that relying on other people is safe. And not just safe, but that it actually works. You are literally rewiring those old, broken beliefs and building new pathways in your brain that make it easier to ask for help next time. You know, there's a saying, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. And this isn't about weakness, it's about wisdom. It's about finally recognizing that we are so much stronger, healthier, and just plain happier when we're together. So I'm going to leave you with this one question to think about. What is one small, simple ask you can make this week to start rebuilding your pack? Because that one tiny step, it could be the start of a much better, much more connected life.